The Australian Open is a major tennis tournament held annually over the last fortnight of January in Melbourne, Australia. First held in 1905, the tournament is chronologically the first of the four Grand Slam tennis events of the year, the other three being the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. It features men's and women's singles, men's, women's, and mixed doubles and juniors championships, as well as wheelchair, legends and exhibition events. Prior to 1988 the tournament had been played on grass. Since 1988 two types of hard-court surfaces have been used at Melbourne Park, a green Rebound Ace to 2007 and blue Plexicushion from 2008. The Australian Open typically has very high attendance, second only to the US Open. It was also the first Grand Slam tournament to feature indoor play during wet weather or extreme heat, with its two primary courts, the Laver Arena and Hisense Arena, equipped with retractable roofs. History. The Australian Open is managed by Tennis Australia, formerly the Lawn Tennis Association of Australia, and was first played at the Warehousemen's Cricket Ground in Melbourne in 1905. This facility is now known as the Albert Reserve Tennis Centre. The tournament was first known as the Australasian Championships and then became the Australian Championships in 1927 and the Australian Open in 1969. Since 1905, the Australian Open has been staged in 5 Australian and 2 New Zealand cities as follows: Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, Brisbane, Perth, Christchurch, and Hastings. Though started in 1905, the tournament was not designated as being a major championship until 1924, by the International Lawn Tennis Federation in a 1923 meeting. The tournament committee changed the structure of the tournament to include seeding at that time. In 1972, it was decided to stage the tournament in Melbourne each year, at the Kong Lawn Tennis Club, because Melbourne attracted the biggest patronage of any Australian city. The tournament was played at the Kong Club from 1972 until the move to the new Melbourne Park complex in 1988. The new facilities at Melbourne Park were envisaged to meet the demands of a tournament that had outgrown Kong's capacity. The move to Melbourne Park was an immediate success, with a 90% increase in attendance in 1988 on the previous year at Kong. Because of Australia's geographic remoteness, very few foreign players entered this tournament in the early 20th century. In the 1920s, the trip by ship from Europe to Australia took about 45 days. The first tennis players who came by aircraft were the US Davis Cup players in November 1946. Even inside the country, many players could not travel easily. When the tournament was held in Perth, no one from Victoria or New South Wales crossed by train, a distance of about 3,000 kilometres between the east and west coasts. In Christchurch in 1906, of a small field of 10 players, only 2 Australians attended, and the tournament was won by a New Zealander. The first tournaments of the Australasian Championships suffered from the competition of the other Australasian tournaments. Before 1905, all Australian states and New Zealand had their own championships, the first organised in 1880 in Melbourne and called the Championship of the Colony of Victoria. In those years, the best 2 players are Australian Norman Brooks and New Zealander Anthony Wilding almost did not play this tournament. Brooks came once and won in 1911, and Wilding entered and won the competition twice. Their meetings in the Victorian Championships helped to determine the best Australasian players. Even when the Australasian Championships were held in Hastings, New Zealand, in 1912, Wilding, though 3 times Wimbledon champion, did not come back to his home country. It was a recurring problem for all players of the era. Brooks went to Europe only 3 times, where he reached a Wimbledon challenge round once and then won Wimbledon twice. Thus, many players had never played the Austral, Amateur or Open Championships. The Doherty brothers, William Land, Maurice McLellan, Beals Wright, Bill Johnston, Bill Tilden, Rena Copyright Lacoste, Henri Cochet, Bobby Riggs, Jack Kramer, Ted Schroeder, Pancho Gonzalez, Budge Patty, Manuel Santana, Jan Kadir and others, while Brooks, Ellsworth Vines, Czesław Drobny 1/2, Manuel Arantz, Elina Florence stars at 35 years old, and Bja Paragraph RN Borg came just once. Beginning in 1969, when the first Australian Open was held on the Milton Courts at Brisbane, the tournament was open to all players, including professionals who were not allowed to play the traditional circuit. Nevertheless, except for the 1969 and 1971 tournaments, many of the best players missed this championship until 1982, because of the remoteness, the inconvenient dates, and the low prize money. In 1970, George McCall's National Tennis League, which employed Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, Andrew Copyright S. Gimeno, Pancho Gonzalez, Roy Emerson, and Fred Stoll, prevented its players from entering the tournament because the guarantees were insufficient, and the tournament was ultimately won by Arthur Ashe. In 1983, Ivan Lendl, John McEnroe, and Mats Wilander entered the tournament. Wilander won the singles title and both his Davis Cup singles rubbers in the Swedish loss to Australia at Köln shortly after. Following the 1983 Australian Open, the International Tennis Federation prompted the Lawn Tennis Association of Australia to change the site of the tournament, because the Köln Stadium was then inappropriate to serve such a big event, and in 1988 the tournament was first held at Flinders Park on Rebound Ace. The change of the venue also led to a change of the court surface from grass to a hard court surface known as Rebound Ace. Mats Wilander was the only player to win the tournament on both grass and hard courts. In 2008, after being used for 20 years, the Rebound Ace was replaced by a cushioned, medium-paced, acrylic surface known as Plexicushion Prestige. Roger Federer and Serena Williams are the only players to win the Australian Open on both Rebound Ace and Plexicushion Prestige. The main benefits of the new surface are better consistency and less retention of heat because of a thinner top layer. This change was accompanied by changes in the surfaces of all lead-up tournaments to the Australian Open. The change was controversial because of the new surface's similarity to Deco Turf, the surface used by the US Open. Before the Melbourne Park Stadium era, tournament dates fluctuated as well, in particular in the early years because of the climate of each site or exceptional events. For example, the 1919 tournament was held in January 1920 and the 1923 tournament in Brisbane took place in August when the weather was not too hot and wet. After a first 1977 tournament was held in December 1976 January 1977, the organisers chose to move the next tournament forward a few days, then a second 1977 tournament was played, but this failed to attract the best players. From 1982 to 1985, the tournament was played in mid-December. Then it was decided to move the next tournament to mid-January, which meant there was no tournament in 1986. Since 1987, the Australian Open date has not changed. However, some top players, including Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, have said that the tournament is held too soon after the Christmas and New Year holidays, thus preventing players from reaching their best form, and expressed a desire to shift it to February. Such a change, however, would move the tournament outside the summer school holiday period, potentially impacting attendance figures. Another change of venue was proposed in 2008, with New South Wales authorities making clear their desire to bid for hosting rights to the tournament once Melbourne's contract expires in 2016. In response, Wayne Kaler-Thompson, the head of the Victorian Events Industry Council, was adamant that Melbourne should retain the event, and, in a scathing attack of the New South Wales authorities, said, "It is disappointing that NSW cannot be original and seek their own events instead of trying to cannibalise other Australian cities." Since the proposal was made, a major redevelopment of Melbourne Park has been announced, which is expected to run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Melbourne Park will include upgraded and increased seating in major venues, a roof over Margaret Court Arena, improved player facilities, a new headquarters for Tennis Australia, and a partly covered town square area featuring large televisions showing current tennis play. A year later, these plans were largely approved, with former Premier of Victoria John Brumby confirming the state government's willingness to commit $363 million to complete the renovations, a move which guaranteed there will be no change of venue until at least beyond 2036. Television coverage. In Australia, the Australian Open has been broadcast by 7 networks since 1973. Between 2003 and 2009, it was co-broadcast by Fox Sports. Since 2011, Fox Sports Co. has broadcast the Australian Open. In the United States, the tournament is broadcast with both live and pre-recorded coverage on ESPN2, ESPN3 and the Tennis Channel. The championship matches are televised live on ESPN. In Europe, the tournament is broadcast on Eurosport. In the United Kingdom, the BBC broadcasts the men's and women's finals live on BBC Two. Internationally, the tournament is broadcast on ESPN International in Central and Latin America, ESPN Star Sports in Pan-Asia, WOW in Japan and Shanghai TV in China. The Australian Open is the least televised Grand Slam event because of the time zone differences between Australia and the large population of North and South America. The men's-women's finals start at 7 p.m. local time on Sunday-Saturday, which is 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday-Sunday. The Australian Open final for men is traditionally one of the most watched sports events in Australia. Recent attendances: 2014 AA Euro 643,280, 2013 AA Euro 684,457, 2012 AA Euro 686,006. 2011 AA Euro 651,127, 2010 AA Euro 653,860, 2009 AA Euro 603,160, 2008 AA Euro 605,735, 2007 AA Euro 554,858, 2006 AA Euro 550,550, 2005 AA Euro 543,873, 2004 AA Euro 521,691. Prize money and trophies. The prize money awarded in the men's and women's singles tournaments is distributed equally. The total prize money for the 2013 tournament is AUD $30 million. In 2013 the prize money was distributed as follows, per team. Note, all amounts in Australian dollars. On October 4, 2011, when they launched Australian Open 2012, the tournament director announced that the prize money was increased to 26 million Australian dollars. It is the highest prize money for a tennis tournament. It was announced the prize money will be increased to 30 million Australian dollars from 2013 onwards. The names of the tournament winners are inscribed on the Perpetual Trophy Cups. The women's singles winner is presented with the Daphne Aukhurst Memorial Cup. The men's singles winner is presented with the Norman Brooks Challenge Cup. Australia Open was recently voted the best tennis tournament in the 2013 Tennis magazine. Ranking points for the ATP and WTA have varied at the Australian Open through the years, but presently singles players receive the following points. Champions, Australian Open champions listed by event, men's singles, women's singles, men's doubles, women's doubles, mixed doubles, singles finals, current champions. Records: unlike the other 3 Grand Slam tournaments, which became open in 1968, the Australian tournament opened to professionals in 1969. Thus, the records here break at the 1969 tournament. Citations for these records. See also: Australian Open Extreme Heat Policy, References. External links. Official website, Tennis Australia website, satellite image of the venue, Australian Open Euro All winners and runners-up. Reference book.